Hello fellow history lovers, welcome back to my channel. My name is Philippa Lacey Brewell and this is the This Week in British History series. This week we're looking at events which happened between the 24th of February and the 1st of March. And if you enjoy the channel, please do subscribe. Click the bell so you get notifications. There's these videos each Sunday, but also there's bonus videos as well which go live at other times, so you will get to know when they are there and ready for you to watch. If you do like it as well, please do give it a thumbs up, and if you comment below then I will reply to your comment. I always do my best to reply to every single comment that is made on my videos because I appreciate your time being here. Right, so without further ado, let's get started. We will cover 4 events which happened in this week. This week, we're going to look at the excommunication of Elizabeth I by Pope Pius V. Elizabeth was Protestant, so let's go into that. We have the issuing of the first £1 banknote in England, and I have a £1 note to show you. We also have the death of a man who, if you don't know his name, you will certainly know his work, the architect of St Paul's Cathedral, Sir Christopher Wren. And then a non-British event, but one that fascinates me, and that is the Inquisition of Galileo in Rome. On the 25th of February 1570, Elizabeth I, the Protestant Queen of England, was excommunicated by Pope Pius V. Now, although that would not have meant anything to her on a personal level, she didn't believe the same things. She wasn't being cut off from how she wanted to practice her religion. It had massive implications for her in terms of her policy towards religion in her own country, because the Catholic Church didn't recognise the annulment of the marriage between her father Henry VIII and his first wife Catherine of Aragon. Therefore his second marriage to Elizabeth's mother, Anne Boleyn, couldn't be legal, and therefore Elizabeth couldn't be legitimate. This is their thinking. Pope Pius V was trying to eradicate heresy and bring everyone back into the Catholic fold and unite Europe again under the Catholic Church. This excommunication from Pope Pius V had effectively given sanction for holy war, which included the assassination of Elizabeth herself. Now, Elizabeth presided over a country new to religious divide. Her father, Henry VIII, had split with Rome and put himself as the head of the Catholic, or head of the Church in England. There was no difference at that point. So Elizabeth was treading a fine balance, and on purpose trying to not create big religious schism. So this was really significant and dangerous for the political and religious stability in England. Before this point, everyone was supposed to attend Protestant church services, but those who didn't would be fined. They were known as recusants, and they would be fined, and it was a low-level fine, and it was not always implemented. But after this point, people who didn't come to Protestant services not only were seen as recusants, as people not conforming to the new religion, but they were actually seen as potential threats. As time went on and plots were uncovered against Elizabeth, the sanctions against Catholics practising in England got tighter and tighter. And this is the time where we begin to see houses such as Harvington Hall in Worcestershire being created with their priest holes. So the act of excommunicating the Protestant Queen of England would have major impacts on her country and on her people. On the 25th of February 1723, Christopher Wren dies. Now, Christopher Wren is responsible for many buildings which you will have feasted your eyes upon, not least St Paul's Cathedral in the City of London. But he's also responsible for the Royal Observatory, for the Royal Naval College Greenwich Monument, Kensington Palace, Hampton Court Palace, the other side. He oversaw many building projects. Now, St Paul's Cathedral is the 5th cathedral on the site, 4th one having burnt down in 1666 in the Great Fire. The cathedral, with its famous dome, originally the dome wasn't approved, and it's up for debate. The dome was kind of officially agreed to a lot later on, but the design of the cathedral meant that it could be structurally would be able to be added. So as if Sir Christopher had this idea for the dome, and basically was building it in order to put the dome on top, regardless of the fact that when the original plans were agreed, the dome was not going to be allowed. It felt this was it's an Anglican church, so it felt that looked way too much like St Peter's in Rome. So Sir Christopher Wren was responsible for a great deal of the rebuilding work after the Great Fire of London in 1666. He's responsible not only for the cathedral but 51 other churches in the city area. The work on St Paul's Cathedral started in 1676 and it was completed in 1711. Sir Christopher lived to see the entire 35-year project, and he is buried in the crypt. Now, he's buried in a very simple tomb, and it's actually, you have to ask to where it is when you go and find it. But it's simple, and for very good reason. He's buried with family members, so that's also one reason, but the epitaph is perfect. Put up, I believe, by his son following the death of his father. His epitaph simply reads, "If you seek his monument, look around you." How perfect is that? He's built St Paul's Cathedral. I don't need a tomb. This is my work. I just think that's absolutely fantastic. Now, his portrait in the National Portrait Gallery is one of my favourites because of the detail. You can actually see the plans of St Paul's Cathedral under his right hand. On the 26th of February 1616, a Roman Inquisition delivered a verdict on Galileo, telling him that he must renounce or abandon his belief in heliocentrism. Heliocentrism stated that the sun was the centre of our universe and the Earth and other planets revolved around it. According to the Catholic Church at the time, the Earth was the centre of the universe. The sun and all other planets revolved around it. We then have heaven above and hell below. So to say anything other than this was seen as heresy. Galileo Galilei had risen to prominence as head of mathematics at the University of Pisa and later Padua between 1589 and 1610. His own observations supported the work of Polish astronomer Copernicus, who had written in the early 1500s about heliocentrism, that the sun was the centre and the Earth and planets revolved around it. This is what Galileo was being told that he must abandon. He must abandon this belief, and Copernicus's book was put on the list of banned books. Galileo was no longer to support Copernicus's theory in public. Although Galileo accepted his judgment, he did go on to develop other things based on this theory. He developed compasses, telescopes, balances, which went on to improve understanding of the galaxy. His continuing with his work and continuing with his discoveries meant that he further angered the church, and he was convicted of heresy in 1633 and put under house arrest, where he remained for the rest of his life. Now, why would I choose an event in history which isn't British? Well, because the Catholic Church was a huge influence on England and Britain, because it was only 50 years since the Reformation-ish. We're still within people's lifetime of the Reformation, and the Catholic Church is still a power, and it was a massive influence then on people's lives. So it interests me. It actually interests me in three ways. One, I love Italy. Two, I am fascinated by people who have almost feel like they've lived at the wrong time, because their work, their discoveries, their ideas are so against the accepted beliefs, laws, norms of their time, that fascinates me as well. And then obviously we have the Catholic link to England, to Scotland, to Wales, to Ireland. That means that the Catholic Church was very much an influence on people here. In this week in British history, we had the issuing of the first £1 note. Now I actually have two dates for this, 26th of February and the 2nd of March. So this week. And I have a copy of one to show you. In 1797, following the Napoleonic Wars, it became necessary to create notes of a lower denomination. Now, initially, they would have been in exchange for the same amount in gold, but that isn't actually the case today. The promise to pay the bearer actually just relates now to the fact that if you've got a tatty old note, you can exchange it for a new note. But we have a copy of one of the £1 notes here. This particular note was issued in March 1981, and we have the portrait of Elizabeth II. Now, she originally wasn't on the notes. Britannia, who's consigned to the bottom left-hand corner, was on the note. But in 1956, the Queen agreed that her portrait would be included on the notes. And on the 17th of March 1960, the first note was issued. Now, this actual note was part of a souvenir created actually by any of you who are my age or older remember video cassette tapes. Yeah, this came with Scotch video cassette tapes. And it was designed to be, well, it says on the back, a £1 note to keep for a lifetime. I mean, they're low enough denominations that obviously people could keep them. But let's have a look at this one. So this is actually not mine. It was my dad's, and he has gifted it to my son. So hopefully neither of them watch this and see me taking it out. But let's have a look. I'm intrigued to see what's on the back, because I can't see the back. And we have Sir Isaac Newton on the back, a kind of daisy wheel down the bottom with Sir Isaac Newton's birth and death date. We have Isaac Newton with a book and a telescope on the table behind him, underneath a tree, of course, because the gravity, apple falling from the tree. He observed and realised that gravity must exist. Lots of very clever mathematical things going on there. And the watermark is also the face of Isaac Newton. The last version of the £1 note was printed on the 31st of December 1984. So the £1 note remained legal tender until March 1988, when we went back to using pound coins. The notes deteriorated very quickly and had to be replaced very frequently, and so we now just use the pound coins. Thank you for watching this episode of This Week in British History, with a little additional European history this week. If you enjoyed it, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to leave a comment below, please do. I do answer to all the comments, as long as they're not rude or personal. And I have put in the show notes links to my sources, but also further reading if you are interested in any of the topics that we've covered today. This is also available as a podcast. The link is also in the show notes to that. If you would like to take this in as a podcast, that's available weekly as well. But finally, just from the bottom of my heart, thank you for watching. I'll see you next week.